listening to The Voice of Russia with me, Juliet Spear. Now, it's that time of year in England and Wales when 17 and 18-year-olds and above anxiously await the results of their A-level examinations. For some, it won't be the grades, though, they get that will be preventing them from going to university, but the debt ahead of them. The coalition government decided to increase tuition fees in England and Wales to nearly £9,000 a year. Now, the average tuition fee at an English university is £8,385, and EU and UK students are entitled to take out government-backed loans in order to pay back the fees. A report by the Independent Commission published ahead of the A-level results day reveals the number of university applicants in England has fallen by around 8% compared to the applications in 2010. Now, that's around 15,000 fewer applicants in England. But 1 in 4 students drop out in their first year. So were the previous Labour government right to encourage 50% of young people to go to university? And is university necessarily the right route to take? Some might ask, what is the point of higher education? And with me to discuss this today is Professor Anthony Smith, the Vice Provost of University College London, Spencer Melman, a Managing Director of a website called notgoingtouni.co.uk, Annika Olsen is a researcher at the Institute for Public Policy and currently looking into the future of higher education in England, and Callum Lynch-Strachan, who's been offered a place at university, is waiting to accept it. So maybe today's discussion could convince him one way or another. I'd like to ask you first, Professor Smith, what's the point of university?
Well, I think our view at UCL would be that what we most want to see in our graduates is a range of skills that are going to enable them to move into graduate-level jobs. Clearly, it's a time of huge anxiety for prospective students, very difficult decisions that lie ahead of them. What can they see? They can see that they will accumulate some quite significant debt under the new tuition fee arrangements, and they can also see issues of unemployment looming large. Today's figures of something like 20+% unemployment into 16 to 24-year-olds poses them some really terrible choices. I think what they need to be thinking about is the longer-term view of what are going to be the kind of jobs that are needed really to take the economy further, and those absolutely require graduate level skills, and that's what a good university education will do.
Alongside good graduate skills, what's the value in completing a university course?
There's two elements about it. There are what are going to be the sort of subject-specific knowledge that they get. And if you look at what graduate-level employers want, something like about a quarter of them want specific knowledge skills. But if you survey, as we do, and what do graduate employers tell us, 75% of them, they want students that have really sort of honed their skills in critical thinking, in analysis, and in communication. And that's what completing a degree program gives all students.
Annika Olsen, you're a researcher at the Institute for Public Policy Research. Now, does the whole education sector need a bit of a shake-up in response to the rising tuition fees? What evidence are you finding?
Well, the evidence shows that graduates do earn more on average than non-graduates. So the median hourly pay for graduates is just over £16 compared to £10 for people who have left school after A-levels. And the advantage is more than just in difference in pay. Having a degree also decreases your likelihood of being unemployed. So the employment rate for people graduating in the last 6 years is 85.5% compared to 73.3% for non-graduates. So So even though the labor market has become more competitive and the premium has declined in the past years, this shows that higher education still buys you an advantage in the labor market. But I think there are also other reasons why going to university can be a hugely important, life-changing experience. So things like writing essays and dissertations and going out on weekdays and getting involved in clubs and societies are all part of the student experience that you get from doing a degree. You will also make new friendships, expand your horizon and network, and develop valuable social and communication skills. But perhaps most importantly, if you're academically inclined, you get to engage with a subject of your choosing to a level you're unlikely to do in any other setting. So, like, if you are interested in a topic that you want to study, it is like you should go to university to do it, because you know, that's where you get to do that.
But this experience, alongside the academic study and analysis and structure, this experience, to have the experience, that's quite costly though, isn't it? £9,000 a year for an experience.
It is, and in an ideal world, tuition fees wouldn't be as high as they are now. But if you want to go to university and you want to get this experience and you think you will benefit from it personally or career-wise, I don't think you should let the hike in tuition fees deter you from going, because it's important to remember that you only have to start repaying your student loan if you earn more than $21,000 a year. So if things don't work out for you and you end up not getting a good job, it's not like the government is going to come and track you down and demand that you pay it back. So it may actually be more useful to think of the student loan as a graduate tax, because it will only show up as like a small deduction of your monthly pay.
You're listening to The Voice of Russia with me, Juliet Spare, and I'm asking, what's the point of higher education? And joining me is Spencer Malman, Managing Director of notgoingtouni.co.uk, Annika Olsen from the Institute for Public Policy Research, Callum Lynch-Strachan, who's been offered a place at university and is waiting to accept it, and University College of London Vice Provost Professor Anthony Smith. Professor Smith, do you agree that students should look at this as more of a graduate tax as opposed to a loan?
I think that there's a risk, Juliet, that we can just sort of get stuck in semantics. What is this? As Annika's just explained, that students will, at the end of their time, on the point of graduation, they will have, if it's a 3-year program and if it's charging £9,000 a year, they will have £27,000 worth of debt, which has, and that money has been loaned to them essentially from the government via the student loan company. I think what's important to note, and again Annika's made that point, is that the trigger for the repayment of that only becomes effective once they're in, and currently the threshold is £21,000, which is seen at the level of sort of graduate level pay, so they're in graduate level employment. Then it starts to be repaid. If they don't achieve that, then it's not. So I think it is just semantics about, is it a loan or is it a tax, in the sense you could argue it's both.
Thanks.
The money's loaned to them, and it does become repayable through a taxation on their pay once they've reached that 21,000 threshold.
Okay, thank you, Anthony. Now, I think, Spencer, you've been scribbling away furiously there. You run a website, notgoingtouni.co.uk. Can you just explain to us how that became set up?
Sure. Not Going to Uni was set up by myself and a young chap who approached me. He was 18 years old, he'd been accepted to study law at university, decided not to go for very personal reasons and wanted to find a website that showed him what his options were. He needed a broad understanding of the landscape and nothing existed. He came to me, I had a background in education and technology, and Not Going to Uni was born, and we're now 3 years old. We carry 6,000 live opportunities for young people right across the spectrum. We're not anti-university in any way, shape or form. In fact, a number of the things on our website actually lead you to a degree, but we're everything outside of that very traditional university route.
So what sort of analysis would you say when you go to job fairs and you meet young people and you ask them what they want to do with their lives?
It's quite mixed. We probably attend 80 events up and down the country. We see all manner of young people at these events. Probably we see 250,000 face-to-face and have some sort of dialogue. You get young people coming along and you question them about what they're going to do. And I had one young lady not long ago say to me, "I'm going to university." And I said, "OK, fine, great decision. I'm not anti-uni, but what are you going to study and where would you like that to take you?" And her answer was very simple: "I don't know, I don't know." And it was a question of, there's a lot of young people out there that are going to be perhaps following the crowd, wondering more about the lifestyle issues perhaps, rather than going to university for education and the job that it would lead on to. It's clearly not the case for everybody. I think that a lot of young people are now reanalysing the landscape in light of these tuition fees. And most graduates, let's be honest, will earn 21,000 fairly quickly. So they're going to be paying back that loan at a fairly quick stage. And I think, it might be £9,000 a year, but if you look at a survey put out by a company called Push, who do a university guide, they think the average cost is going to be more like 53 to 55k when you take on board living costs and so on. OK,
so Callum, you've listened to what everyone's had to say so far. You still haven't accepted an offer to Brunel University to study anthropology.
Yep.
Having listened to this, the experience, the debt, the value of education, what are your thoughts?
I think education is highly valuable. But I think the main problem is there's an alienation in the youth with the government and a lot of other organisations, institutions, corporations, the corporate state. So there's a massive problem where children they don't know where they're going, they don't know where the government are going. These institutions, these like Goldsmiths, UCL, Brunel, all these institutions, they do so much research, they know so much about the state of affairs in this country. They know why everything's wrong, they know how to make it better. In a sense, they do. But nothing's done about it. And it even says on the Goldsmiths website, there's so much. Anthropology is an amazing subject. We know so much, but so little is known about it. So I think the big problem for me is knowing, if I'm going to university, how will this change, that I want to see in the world, like that people go to university to do. Like this should be seen in society, and it is worrying for children when they turn on the TV and they see celebrities and they see David Cameron, they see these politicians, and they think, why isn't this information that is going on in the university, this research, why isn't it being implemented with the policies of government? And that's because of the corporate state. So it's not really, it's quite a confusing situation for me, because I want to study anthropology and I want to learn more about the world and try and communicate what needs to be done to help people. And I work with kids at the moment with a project with the K&I Foundation in East London, and we teach them free running. And there is an alienation in the youth, and I think that needs to be addressed before I'll make this decision, really.
Anthony, I'd really like your response to Callum.
He's raised a lot of really interesting points. I think the key one, it kind of it feels like it sort of partly answers his own question, because what's going to break down that alienation is exactly with enthusiastic, bright young people who've had the experience of being at university, having their eyes open to some of the possibilities, looking at being able to sort of think about some of the really important issues that we as a society face, being able to have the time to think about those, reflect on them, look at them from the sort of lens of different disciplines, really to think about that, and then absolutely take it back. Once being a graduate, they're not going to suddenly be in this sort of bubble. It's absolutely about taking it back into their communities and helping and supporting others. That's the very essence of it. And again, as Annika mentioned, that's done through obviously largely through the degree program, but also through issues that they can also do whilst they're at university, volunteering. We've got a tremendous volunteering program here. Last year, 1,500 of our students gave, I think, something like 39,000 hours to the local community. For us, that's in Camden. That's equivalent to one person working for 19 years. fantastic opportunity to get out there and work with local projects. Same things for internships, and student enterprise is also strongly supported, looking to sort of pick out those entrepreneurs, not just in the business field, but in sort of third sector as well. Lots of opportunities, and have those horizons opened up is the very essence of studying for a degree.
When the youth that don't trust, the government and this massive expansion of corporate state, how are we supposed to implement change when there is no trust? There's no trust whatsoever. There isn't any trust. Like the economic system is completely defunct. Like there is no trust. So what good are we to do? If this isn't addressed, this problem here isn't addressed. Like we go. I go to university and I keep doing this, and I'm in a position. Maybe I get into the future. Like everything, history repeats itself. I'm at the head of UCL, like you. I'm doing the exact same thing on the exact same radio talk show, and nothing's changed much. And I just feel like this is a constant recycling thing that's going to happen. So.
Okay, respond to that first, please, Anthony.
Okay. Well, I think it's about two words come to mind. Which I think we're hearing really strongly. It's about advocacy and it's about leadership, and those things they can start locally in advocacy and leadership in local communities, and moving through. People might become more sort of politically active and engaged at that level. That's how change gets made.
So from everything that
it's all too difficult, let's not do it. Then nothing will change.
We'll come to Spencer first, then Callum, you can respond to Anthony after.
That's fine. I'm just keen to bring it back very slightly to some of the key issues. And some of the key issues facing young people today is the lack of quality careers advice. The government has been going around cutting connections offices. Schools have not had the funds to employ qualified careers advisors, and they're reliant on a mishmash of teachers trying to impart this vital information to young people. What has their study been about over their school life? It's all about their future, their career and their future education. And there's barely anybody in post with the knowledge actually to disseminate this. It's an absolute travesty. So careers advice is appalling. Employability skills should be embedded in the curriculum. I employ, we're only 16 people in our company. I've got 4 apprentices. I'm doing what it says on the tin. And I interviewed a lot of them, and employability skills were relatively poor. They come in, you say, what do you know about our organisation? Oh, you're a website. I asked you to be here at 9 o'clock, it's 9:15. Any problems? No, just a bit late. Employability skills need to be addressed at school. Young people have to understand what it's going to be like in the workplace to take advantage of the situations that are going to happen. And I think it's also worth pointing out, a study was done that showed that a young person who does an apprenticeship will earn 105,000 more in their career over the period, which was a similar sort of number that a university graduate was being quoted at. So, there isn't this vast disparity, and you're getting your foot in the door with the employer at an earlier stage, and I think that'll serve you really well.
You're listening to The Voice of Russia with me, Juliet Spare, and I'm asking, what's the point of higher education? And joining me is Spencer Malman, Managing Director of notgoingtouni.co.uk, Annika Olsen from the Institute for Public Policy Research, Callum Lynch-Strachan, who's been offered a place at university and is waiting to accept it, and University College of London Vice Provost Professor Anthony Smith.
I think one thing you perhaps just should say at the outset is that this is early days. This is the first year that this has come in, and we've got to be. There's a great danger that we will extrapolate from what we're seeing happening right now and thinking there's going to be long-term change. We don't know. There may well be, but we don't know. There is not that certainty there. I think. I would agree absolutely with Spencer's point that it's really important that children, as they go through school, need to have different career options absolutely made clear to them, and so that you don't end up with a situation that for some you just think it's the default thing that you go to university. That's one point. I think the other point I think I'd like to make is that this isn't that now what we're beginning to see, and UCL is involved with this, is a greater sort of diversity of provision for students. It's not just about you go to university or you don't. So, for example, we, along with Loughborough University, and are involved with the East London University Technical College, along with Network Rail and Ford, which is absolutely about a different approach to education for 14 to 19-year-olds, where we can much more sort of work-based and technical level training, which will be right for some students. And I think it's that, to have that sort of a much greater diversity of offer and choices for young people has to be a really good thing, even though we are in a very dynamic and profoundly uncertain employment environment at the moment. So the diversity of offer is, I think, has to be a good thing.
This is a tough decision then as to what is the point of university. Callum, do you still feel that you would get anywhere or get further in life by going to university?
Yeah, of course I do. I mean, I think I want to study anthropology, learn more about myself, learn more about the world, and try and implement some sort of change with what I know and the problems that I see in the world. And I think the institution has so much more power than individual human beings now, and that people are losing their individual strength, their individual spirit. The reason, like you said, 1 in 4 people drop out of uni in the first year or something, they feel so controlled by this institution. They feel so maybe powerless and so confused as well about their own lives, you know. But this is obviously a problem with the youth. This is always going to happen. Yeah. There's always going to be this.
It comes down to the poor advice they get in the beginning. They've gone off to uni, they followed the crowd, whether it's because they want a great social life, whether it's they're chasing a dream that's perhaps slightly unrealistic, and all of a sudden they find themselves 150 miles away from home. They've got no friends, they've got debt, they're living in a grotty flat somewhere, they're getting very little tutor time. Virtually every student that I know that went to university tells me the first year is spent in the pub, then everybody spends the second year trying to catch up. I'm really sorry, Anthony, if that's a terrible generalisation, but that's what's fed back to me. And I think that, you know, something like an apprenticeship or a sponsored degree programme, you've got organisations out there like Logica, PwC and Deloitte with sponsored degree programmes. They'll pay for your study. They'll give you a job. They'll cover all of this for you, and they're going to capture you at the outset, and you can have a fantastic career. Something else I'm seeing growth in is non-UK universities now promoting to the UK market. You can go off and study in Maastricht, in New Zealand, in Holland for £1,500 a year, do a degree in the English language, and come back with a high-quality degree that shows that you've stepped outside the box, you've been creative, you've sort of combined it with a gap year, if you like, you've shown you can stand on your own 2 feet. Why not look at those as an option? There's a lot of things outside of that traditional university route, and I must just finally say I think there's a moral issue, a real moral issue about saying to our young people that that level of debt is acceptable when a lot of the degrees that you'll be doing will not lead you further on in the workplace, and that's borne out by the statistics.
Now, Annika, you're from the Institute of Public Policy Research. Spencer says it's morally wrong for students to be told to accept this level of debt, but there's still the argument that the education is crucial.
Yeah, well, I think that is really... I'm going to say this point again, that most people will not pay all of their debt, and like the system takes that into consideration, that, you know, it's a loan, and if people do end up being really successful, they will pay all of it, but most people will not pay all of their loan, and a lot of people will not even pay anything, you know. So I think that's a really important point. But I also agree that it is really important to have a diversity of offer and much more information about the other options out there. And so, because clearly higher education may not be the best route for everyone, and it depends on what you want to do, and some other things may be, much better for you. And there's also a real need to improve vocational learning, both in colleges and via apprenticeships. So this is also something that we're looking at as part of this. What is the role of higher education, and what is the role of vocational learning? And, there's a real lack of attention to vocational learning. There's a real attention just to higher education and the importance of higher education. And there's almost it's almost a bit like the other routes aren't as valued in our society, and I think that's a problem as well.
I agree with you entirely. We need to get people to understand that the vocational route does have real depth to it, and it plays a valid part. I mean, there was 457 apprenticeship starts in 2011 that wouldn't have been there. What would the figures be looking like today if there wasn't an apprenticeship scheme in place helping young people into the workplace? And also the ones that start to do apprenticeships that didn't go to university open the door for those that really want to study to get in and not be rejected by UCAS. A couple of 100,000 students a year are rejected by UCAS, and they may be the ones that deserve and need this more. So the diversity will help the universities, it'll help the students, there'll be less wastage on money. We just need more people looking at the options that exist outside of traditional uni.
Anthony, would you give a final bit of advice to Callum? And sort of, you're from one of the top universities worldwide.
The ambition you've shown and your absolute real passion for citizenship and rights, then the chance to sort of develop that thinking that you'll get from doing your degree in anthropology will be absolutely the right thing for you to do. And I wish you the very best of luck.
Thank you.
Callum, I'd like you now to maybe tell us, I know it's a tough one, but I thought that was a very fair bit of advice from Anthony. And we've learned and heard an awful lot about what is also the alternative to university. And you're still, you are 22 and you have been offered a place, you're still waiting to decide. Will you take up a position at university knowing that you will incur debt, but you will, as Annika has pointed out, make a huge contribution to Britain's future? And alongside what Anthony said, given the time and the space to actually harness those creative passions that you've clearly shown the panel here today.
For myself, I think the best thing for me to do is to be in a place where I can do this, and to be in a place where I can speak and be heard and listen also, and try and develop something and change something. But I think...
And be taught.
And be taught as well, yeah.
We are moving from like an industrial economy into a knowledge economy, which means that we do require more people with higher skills. And we are far from like being able to compete with countries like China and India on manual labor. So in order to be competitive, we need people with high-level skills to compete on knowledge work, like designing computer games and inventing new ways of dealing with global challenges like climate change, food scarcity, and transport. So I think that higher education definitely is very important for our future.
I'd like to thank all of my guests today for joining me, Juliet Spare, on The Voice of Russia, University College London Vice Provost Professor Anthony Smith, Annika Olsen from the Institute for Public Policy Research, Spencer Melman, Managing Director of notgoingtouni.co.uk, and Callum Lynch-Strachan, a prospective student offering us his perspective on today's discussion. You're listening to The Voice of Russia with me, Juliet Spare. Now it's that time of year in England and Wales when 17 and 18-year-olds and above anxiously await the results of their A-level examinations. For some, it won't be the grades, though, they get that will be preventing them from going to university, but the debt ahead of them. The coalition government decided to increase tuition fees in England and Wales to nearly £9,000 a year. Now, the average tuition fee at an English university is £8,385, and EU and UK students are entitled to take out government-backed loans in order to pay back the fees. A report by the Independent Commission published ahead of the A-level results day reveals the number of universities. I'd like to ask you first, Professor Smith, what's the point of university?
Well, I think our view at UCL would be that what we most want to see in our graduates is a range of skills that are going to enable them to move into graduate level jobs. Clearly, it's a time of huge anxiety for prospective students. Very difficult decisions that lie ahead of them. What can they see? They can see that they will accumulate some quite significant debt under the new tuition fee arrangements, and they can also see issues of unemployment looming large. Today's figures of something like 20+% unemployment into 16 to 24-year-olds poses them some really terrible choices. I think what they need to be thinking about is the longer-term view of what are going to be the kind of jobs that are needed really to take the economy further, and those absolutely require graduate-level skills, and that's what a good university education will do.
Alongside good graduate skills, what's the value in completing a university course?
There's two elements about it. There are what are going to be the sort of subject-specific knowledge that they get, and if you look at what graduate-level employers want, something like about a quarter of them want specific knowledge skills. But if you survey, as we do, and what do graduate employers tell us, 75% of them, they want students that have really sort of honed their skills in critical thinking, in analysis, and in communication. And that's what completing a degree program gives all students.
Annika Olsen, you're a researcher at the Institute for Public Policy Research. Now, does the whole education sector need a bit of a shake-up in response to the rising tuition fees? What evidence are you finding?
Well, the evidence shows that graduates do earn more on average than non-graduates. So the median hourly pay for graduates is just over £16 compared to £10 for people who have left school after A-levels. And the advantage is more than just in difference in pay. Having a degree also decreases your likelihood of being unemployed. So the employment rate for people graduating in the last 6 years is 85.5% compared to 73.3% for non-graduates. So even though the labor market has become more competitive and the premium has declined in the past years, this shows that higher education still buys you an advantage in the labor market. But I think there are also other reasons.
The applicants in England has fallen by around 8% compared to the applications in 2010. Now, that's around 15,000 fewer applicants in England. But 1 in 4 students drop out in their first year. So were the previous Labour government right to encourage 50% of young people to go to university? And is university necessarily the right route to take? Some might ask, what is the point of higher education? And with me to discuss this today is Professor Anthony Smith, the Vice Provost of University College London, Spencer Melman, a Managing Director of a website called notgoingtouni.co.uk. Annika Olsen is a researcher at the Institute for Public Policy and currently looking into the future of higher education in England. And Callum Lynch-Strachan, who's been offered a place at university, is waiting to accept it. So maybe today's discussion could convince him one way or another.